right, we're at the Hamer Cemetery, and we have with us Frank Hamer of the Hamer family, and we're starting right out here outside the fence just because I want him to talk about the fence a little bit. And this is not the original fence. He told us a little bit the other day when we were talking about what the original fence looked like and when this fence was built and all. So I was going to ask you again about that. Do you remember when this stone fence was added?
Yes, sure.
Now, was it back in the earlier days of the park? Or?
Oh, no. No, it's, I don't know. Why, my wife and I had worked 20 years to get this started.
What was here before that?
Well, there was had been a post and rail
Okay.
fence.
Or was this before it became a park?
Before that, there had been this is sort of a steel fence.
Okay. And then after it became a park, they used the post and the rail. And, was this built back in the 50s then?
This fence?
Uh-huh.
Oh, let's see. It's kind of hard for me to say. It might have been then. I don't know. I wouldn't just say for sure.
It says it was built by the Green Thumb workers, so I wasn't sure if maybe,
yes,
you know, when they started doing work around the park.
Well,
I used to think it'd been the CCC, but then I realized it was the Green Thumbers that did it.
well, when we got ready and found out we was going to do this, the superintendent here, and I don't remember his name.
Was that Philpott? Dick
Yeah,
Philpott?
yes, yes. He's the one I give credit to getting it. But because we'd been working for it. He was the first one of the superintendents here that was in favor of it. I talked to some of the other older ones, you know, and they was against it. Said, well, that's just catch leaves, that's all it'll do.
I think it's really attractive, and it fits the theme of the village too.
But when this Philpott told me when we finally decided to do it and all, he says, I've got a couple of men working for me all the time here in the park. I think they'll be good help, you know, and can do it.
Yeah.
Well, they laid it up, or they bought the land. They had some other help, Green Thumb fellows.
Yeah. And then did they add the aluminum fence at the same time that goes around the outside? Or
No.
That came later?
No, that was just a wire fence, just a farm fence, you might say.
Oh, okay. Now, was the wire fence, I guess we have to walk inside to see it, but was the wire fence attached to the stone pillars? Maybe I need to help you here.
No,
Okay. You've probably been up these steps many times. These stone pillars now, was that what the wire fence was connected to?
Well, right, the last, to start with, the wire fence just had wooden posts, just a farm.
Just wooden posts and like a woven wire fence.
Yeah.
Well, what was the stone things for? Do you even remember why they set them originally?
Well, not really. Well, they just needed something permanent because the posts, the others would rot off and all.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that my father was the one that set those stone fences. Probably was responsible for them.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely limestone.
Now, after it was a while, it was still a wire fence. Seemed like they wanted to see that walkway, or by what I want to say, one of the what is it that goes around all around over the park?
Trail?
Yeah, trails. Well, it went right, and it does yet. Went by there, and they would mash that.
They've done that even with this fence here, I've noticed, down the end.
Well, they finally took a piece out of it down there. Like the other day, there was a limb broke off and damaged that over there. You know.
Yeah, I saw we had a section that needed repaired. So. Well, one thing I was wanting to ask you is, do you know even how the cemetery got started here? How it even got started? I know it was started under Hugh Hamer, or at least that's what I have assumed.
The cemetery, yeah. I suppose
who the first folks buried here were or anything in the cemetery?
Well, the story is that there was a man and his family going through the country here with a wagon and all, and just camped here that night, and he died. And Hugh Hamer buried him. That was the first. That's the way I've heard it now.
Then it just kind of started around.
An awful long time before my.
It would be fascinating to find out where he was buried, and of course I'm sure it wasn't even much market.
And I understand that it was, only about another year if this happened again. About the same thing. So that those two men were buried.
Right. That's probably over in this area someplace, I would think. Well, there are just some stones I'm going to ask you about. Especially when we get to them, we might kind of get off of the trail so we're not working.
Let me look at my file here.
Right with it. That geranium is really looking good.
Yeah, it's all right.
And your rose is...
I planted that. I had that at home, and I dug it up last fall and planted. It's going to bloom. It's a real pretty
that
red rose.
Yeah, that's got a lot of blossoms on it. It's like we need to put the flag back in the grave here of your son that the veterans said. You get in all right?
You don't have any of this laid yet. The wall can you see? Yeah.
Probably see next week.
I never thought about those first stones, how you'd have difficulties getting around them.
Well, we could come here, Rex. I intended to. It was just going to make it look so.
Yeah, I agree. I think that looks better. I'm not sure where those came from. They just have been put out in the last week or so.
Well, yeah, because I think like Saturday, probably, we put that one out. I wonder, it don't look dry.
No, it's doing real well, it looks like.
If I had a little something, I'd carry some water in. I might.
Well, as much as so. This is Elizabeth. This is Hugh Hamer's mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Henry Fitzpatrick, his father-in-law.
Yeah.
Says he died at 1831.
Yeah.
And this was Hugh Hamer's father, Thomas. Now, these are the actual stones that you brought over from Bono?
Yes. Took them right out of a wood.
And they were buried just on a farm?
Yeah, had been, yeah.
Why?
Well, it was a whole, it was, as I understood it, they had an acre in there, it got full. But,
were there other graves over there, or were these the only ones?
Other graves, oh yeah, it's full.
Oh, okay, so there was others next to them.
We just, of course, we was just interested in these three.
Oh, okay.
And there was 4 of us right over there. And we, let's see now, who died the first?
Well, let's see. Thomas Hamer was 1829. Henry Fitzpatrick was 1831, and Elizabeth Fitzpatrick was 1859.
Well, Hamer,
Thomas Hamer
had been buried 103 years.
My.
When we done this.
Now, you did it in 1939?
Well, it was in 30. Well, I don't remember, but that's the way it's in my mind, Because this uncle of mine, he said we wouldn't find anything, but we did find.
You found the skeleton.
We found bones in all 3 graves and all.
Was there anything else around the grave so far as wood or?
This stuff that was growing, we had to do a lot of clearing to dig into them.
That's amazing that the stones that you moved have just stayed in such excellent condition. That's a very ornate carving in there.
But I tried to keep them straightened up, but they kept falling over and all. See that? Nothing has been broken off. You see they've got some places in there.
And then that's where Thomas Hamer was in the War of 1812. And Jacob Lemons. Now, is this the doctor that was in Springville Village, Jacob Lemons?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And the large marker is Mary, his wife. And Hugh Lemon must be a grandson from the appearances. Okay. There's another grave while we're standing over here that I wanted to ask you about, and it's this one. This is the grave of an infant that was a Turley, and it's the only Turley that I can find we have in Hamer Cemetery. Most of the Turley family were buried in their own cemetery. Do you have any idea why they buried, or were all of these graves here Turley graves, and maybe the markers are gone?
That's about as much as I know about it, if they are. But I took it to say that he done, and that was when, was it Jonathan Turley?
Jonathan Turley?
That's when he owned it, you see.
Well, it says R.B. and M.A. Turley.
I imagine they were his children.
But I wonder why they didn't bury them with the rest of the Turley family. Yeah. But you don't know who would be buried in these other places here?
No graves in there, I don't think.
Okay.
I come very near having taken these out one time.
Uh-huh.
And all, but found out, you see, they're not poured concrete. They're just limestone. They're about that broad.
Well, surely they were put in here for a reason.
Yeah.
I would think that there are graves in there. But especially with these markers, but nothing's written on them, so it's kind of difficult to tell who would be buried here.
Well, I've heard there's just 2 children buried in here. I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't have put another monument in there.
I don't know. I've been curious about that whenever I come through here, but I've not been able to find out. Now, was this the area where they began to dig a grave and they found some graves already there?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Okay. And so, the graves that they found were the Brim children?
No.
Okay.
No. He told me that they were.
Okay.
This Brim, I was out here after I didn't know who was doing what when he just went to work and put this in here.
Oh, okay.
And he told me, he says, 2 of my children are buried in there. And all. I said, he said they dug down into it and run into the grave. Well, he didn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Because they sent for me as soon as they hit. They did. They found out they had dug into a grave. And I come right out here because we was going to bury my boy that afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And all. And the mortuary then was in Orleans. They was. That's when I lived down there anyway. And all. Well, when I got out here, they had this here was the grave right here.
Oh, okay.
Full grave. They dug down and uncovered the whole thing. They was just kind of waiting, I think, these 2 men that was doing the digging. As soon as we got out here and saw where it was, they had even kind of loosened the top on that grave. And they stuck a shovel under it to kind of pry it up just to show it to the mortician, you know. And he stopped them right quick. Says, don't do anything. Let's fill it up as quick as we can. Well, I had to do something right quick.
Yeah.
So that's how I come to pick a spot over there.
Oh, okay. But you don't.
Where my boy's buried.
You don't think the grave that they dug up were these folks?
I was just pretty sure it wasn't. I'd come near thinking they buried back over there someplace.
Oh, really? Wonder who it was then, if it wasn't them. Was it a full-size casket?
Here?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. My.
You know it wouldn't have been children.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If it was
that's what I say. I don't think that's all. He's gone now. I can talk about him. But,
okay.
I didn't think he was just the best fellow in the world.
Right.
When he claimed that, no.
Oh, okay.
No. Because it's some of the same family buried back over there. I think it is.
Well, do you know of any other graves here that are not marked? That okay.
Not in here. No.
There's one story that I have heard from several.
I was a little afraid of this when.
Oh, really?
When Hugh was getting ready. Well, he and his wife. See, that's my cousin.
Yeah, this is the one in New York.
Yeah. When they come out here and just decided on this themselves, and I told him then they was going to put this casket up, and I kind of hated to see them do it. I said, you may, there might be some other more unmarked graves there. They said, no, we had it tested. Well, I don't know how they had it tested. But anyway, they went ahead, and as it happened, there's only been one grave dug over there, you see.
I see.
And that's right around here.
Okay, that was her grave.
The grave right here.
Okay.
Well, there was a little mix-up in that.
Okay.
She died in New York, you see, and they lived up there. And I don't know who was doing the telephoning down here. But the mortician in Mitchell come out here with me and all. And see, that had been set, this stone had been set a few years, you see. And whoever had been doing the telephone had called him, and they said to be sure that Goldie is buried on the side where the heart is.
Okay.
Will you
Side
see
where
that?
And the heart is on this side.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, I told Albert as soon as we came out here and saw that, I says, Albert, somebody's got it mixed up. I said, this carving was already on there.
Yeah.
And all. I said, here's her grave. So he just forgot about it then and just went ahead with it. So
Okay.
it was, as I say, it was just done over the telephone, and whoever's at the other end didn't know what this looked like.
There was one story, and maybe you haven't heard it, maybe you know a lot about it, where there was a railroad accident and quite a few railroad workers were killed.
Well, I've heard, no,
Okay.
I've heard that the ones that was buried here was the one when they were building the railroad.
Yeah, yeah. Were they buried in this cemetery?
Well, they kind of think maybe that's why they're running in some unmarked graves.
Okay.
My mother kind of talked about it, like they just use it as a potter's field over here or anything.
Did you have any idea if that was true, where it would be at, which area?
I don't know. I wouldn't.
I've wondered about that, but
I wouldn't know that. Of course, when they built that railroad, Hugh Hamer was still around here.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It just seems to be a legend, but I can't find anything on paper to support, where they would be buried if that was true.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
here's the stone of Hamer himself, Hugh Hamer.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. They were working out here one time with a horse, trying to kind of do some work, and the horse got against this and broke it off. It broke off up here.
Oh, a horse did that?
Just bumped into it, and that's what they told me. That's the way it happened.
My.
But anyway, they just stuck it back.
Maybe a horse knocked the whole thing off and it broke, and then they set it back on.
They just said it was the top.
Do you have any idea about this grave? This is another one that I've wondered about because the top is missing. Is this one of Hugh's children, possibly?
Could be. I don't know.
Okay.
But maybe some of Thomas's. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, Thomas is very close by.
What do you think about them putting these up this way like this? What will happen if these fixed good?
Well, I don't know. I guess time will be the thing that will tell us.
Well, what I'm talking about, so it's
yeah.
in the back of it. Yeah.
I suppose something needed to be done. I don't know, how well it will work, but we'll find out.
Well, that's one thing about it. No, I was awful glad about it because it was the first time my sister and I came out here. This man that's doing this was working right here then, pretty soon, pretty close. And I brought him down here and showed him. I said, it sounds all right what you're doing here, but I said, this is especially one that I want to see fixed. Because I fixed it myself 2 or 3 times and it won't stay.
Which one was
So
that?
I brought it down here and showed it to him, and I think he must have went to work on it the next day.
Okay.
I hope it's still there. That's that one.
Yeah. Harry Hamer,
Harry, yeah.
son of.
See, there's. His, I can't read those. When did he die, or how
Says
old?
he died
How
October
old? How old?
October 11th, 1165. It looks like, and he was aged 3 years, 3 months, and 1 day. It looks like, and it was Harry Hamer, son of.
Yeah, Harry
I'm
was
just-
the name.
I'm just real unclear on whose son he was. Looks like that might possibly be an initial.
Well, now, of course, these would have been. He'd have been my uncle, and these would have been my aunts.
Okay, Harry, Minnie, and
What was the other one here?
Ida May.
Ida.
Okay. Okay, these were the children then of George Washington and Priscilla Hamer.
Yeah.
And George Washington Hamer is there, and he was your grandpa?
Yeah. And the grandmother, and I actually lived with my grandmother about 2 years, almost.
Priscilla?
Yes. And she used to talk about these children and all. Then to me, you know.
So you remember her talking about
I remember
her
her
children that
talking
had died.
And I don't remember her telling me any more than it was back before enough that, well, you look around, a lot of children did die. I don't know. These were all had a year or two on them. I don't know just how much. But she used to talk to me about them.
Well, you know, I thought it was interesting because there's an Ida May here, and then there's an almost identical stone over there that says Ida May.
Well,
and it's the same style stone, and it's almost the same year that they died, with the same name and the same stone almost. But this was an Ida May Evans, and this was an Ida May Hamer.
well,
Just
I don't know.
curious thing, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
It really is. Now, these over here are the Bundys that lived in the village
Yes.
right at the end after it was abandoned, or
Well,
almost abandoned.
well, they were still living down there when I remember. No, this is my uncle and aunt.
Okay, this.
That's Hugh's dad. Hugh Hamer's dad.
Okay.
This Hugh up here. See,
Okay.
that's his dad. Been my uncle.
Okay. I see.
And
Grace and Ralph and.
after Uncle Ralph died, my aunt, well, there's been some peonies, I guess is the right way to say it. But, anyway, she wanted them, and she got some she wanted red ones, and she wanted me to set them out for her. I said, well, you get them, and I will. Well, she got them, and she got one for me, and mine died, and I couldn't keep these going. They'd mow over, just a little thing there, you know. So I made some stakes, and I drove the stakes in there. All us set a stick up about that far, this wooden stick. Come back out here, and the stakes was gone.
Oh, why?
And maybe what was left of them, they'd run into this big mower and all. Well, I didn't put up with that too long. I had a steel post at home.
Oh, my.
I cut it in two and made two out of it and drove men down in there. And they're still in there. No, I took them out finally.
Okay.
But they never did run over them. They went around them.
And now we have the pineys here, but these aren't red ones. These are white
No,
pines.
they're not. No, and mine didn't die either. You know. So that's.
And so that was your Uncle Frank's brother, and your father was Albert, and that was his brother,
yeah,
Ralph.
3 boys.
Ralph, Albert,
Not
and
the other 3 children.
Frank.
See,
okay.
you know.
The other 3 died in childhood, and then
Yeah.
these 3 lived.
Now that Dolly Bundy there,
Dolly. Okay.
she was just about my age.
Okay.
What,
Yeah, you were born in the same year,
Yeah.
1896.
96, yeah. Now, I remember her. She just,
Well, she died at the age of, it looks like about 25, isn't it, or 24?
she was, what I want to say about her, she's one of these people that didn't know anything.
Oh.
Just grew up that way.
Mentally handicapped.
Never bothered anybody. Now her mother used to do some laundry for my mother, and I used to take them back and forth, buggy and horse and buggy, and take it up. They lived up here right on top of the hill, the other side of the park, you know.
And she died at a young age, it seems.
Yeah. Well, no, she wasn't.
Well, in her 20s.
How old was she?
About 23, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say she was growing, you know. I don't think she ever did go to school or anything. A day, you know.
Yeah.
Just.
But did they live in the village? These Bundys?
At one time they did.
Okay. In the nursery, you were telling us?
I think so. Yes.
Now, is this William Dalton, the Dalton that ran the distillery? It says William Dalton. He was born 1816, died 1887.
I really don't know. It seems to me like I heard Lois Gray, you know who that is?
Yes.
I heard her say that he wasn't the one.
Okay.
Somebody asked the same question.
Okay.
I heard her say he wasn't the one.
Okay. It would be interesting to look into. While we're over in this area, there's another stone that I was curious about, and that's this one over here. This is the stone of a baby named Cleon Russell, and its mother was named Edna Russell, and I was told, I got a phone call, that the mother is buried beside it, but there's no marker on her grave, but she's buried next to the infant. And there was some suspicion of maybe foul play in her death. Do you remember the Russell? The husband was a logger.
Just barely. I've heard it talked about her. I don't know. I just hearsay with me. I heard it talk about it.
Yeah.
He wasn't a very good character.
Yeah. Well, that's what we were told too.
That's something about all
Well, I noticed he's not buried here, or if he is, there was no stone. So I've been kind of curious why the baby and the mother are buried here, but not the father.
Now, it seemed to me like that Russell, or was a Russell, I don't know whether it's that or not, that lived up there just about where the headquarters is of the park up there.
Oh, the Grissom Memorial area?
I mean, where you were all ago.
Oh, the service building.
Service building, yeah.
Okay.
See,
Well, there was a house where the property manager's house is before it was built.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Yeah, I remember that.
now, who was
See,
it?
there was a road come from the highway right
Okay.
straight through there, too. See?
Who was it that lived there in the early days that you could remember?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Well, it might have been some of these Russians. I don't know.
Okay.
That's as much, yes, as I can remember.
This tree's been here a long time, hasn't it?
Yes. That's a nice stone. That's Bundy put up there.
William Bundy.
I was surprised at that. We had a meeting with some of the state officials. Of the parks and stuff. And that was when we was working on, well, I don't know as far as it was, but anyway, this Bundy was there with me. He was in the meeting. He just took it on himself to go over there. I didn't know just exactly who he was. I knew some of them, but I didn't know him. You know, it just wasn't very long after that he died.
My.
Yeah.
It says 1988.
Yeah, of course, he'd come over. Well, there was a good deal in this meeting we were having about who could be buried in here and who wouldn't be, you know.
Now, was he a brother maybe to Dolly and?
No,
and
I don't. He wouldn't have been that old.
maybe a son of one of them. Then.
He wasn't too old a man. He had quite a little family.
Possibly one of these Bundys or a parent.
I don't know what his trouble was. He died pretty quick though, right after that. But he looked at then. He was a real slim fellow.
Let's maybe walk around this direction.
Which way we're going?
Just kind of walk around here, and there's just so many of these that I'm curious about, but if there's any that you knew the people or remembered something about them, just speak up, because I can't ask about every stone, but I wish I could. Lucille Klaus and this Roy Sutherland, I've wondered about both of these. These look like they were made by hand, and he's the only Sutherland here. Do you remember anything about this?
No, none whatever.
Okay. Well, now there were some Klauses that were in the original village, and then there was some that were supposed to have lived here while the village was abandoned.
Yeah.
But again, do you know anything about this particular one?
Well, that was, I was telling him coming out here about having a girlfriend.
Oh.
And she was a Klaus. But there was a lot of them, and all. There's where somebody got into that fence, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, there was a limb fell in here, I think, and done that.
Oh, okay.
That ought to be put back together.
Yeah, that needs repaired.
That's just all anybody's got to do is step through there. But it looks like they just left it open, don't it?
Yeah, and the trail goes right around there too, doesn't it? How about this DeReed? Do you know them? I noticed that they're the only one by that name in the cemetery, but they're a fairly recent grave.
Up here?
Uh-huh.
I can tell you a good deal about them.
Okay.
If you want to go on up there.
Okay. Looks like the wife is still alive, but the husband has passed away.
Yeah, I correspond with her all the time. I owe her a letter right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Now she was related with the Hamers.
Okay.
She was about the same relation as I am, the old one. You know. And now I never could pronounce the name like she could. She does like she does. But she was an Evan, you know, and it was I think it was the second, might have been a third marriage for her. I don't know, but anyway, they both had been married and all, and I'll have to go back a little bit. I think the first time probably they ever come here together to look at the cemetery, the fact that she was tied into it, you see, to the Hamers. Well, was a Hamer, no. So they asked somebody down here if there was any of the Hamers left around here. Well, when they asked somebody, whoever was in charge down here then, they'd always tell them about me, because I was living there in town, you know. Well, they come to see me, and I was in St. Louis. But while they was just there getting ready to leave, they'd stopped, found the place, you know. But this sister of mine come up there, and they got acquainted with her, and she said they were such nice people and everything, you know. And then in the next year or two, they got a motor home. And I invited them when we started corresponding, you know, and she said they had this, and I said, well, why don't you head this thing towards Mitchell sometime? See, they lived in California, you know, San Jose, you know, still does, she does, you know. And they took it up that they would, so they did. They came, I says, I've got a full trailer hookup in my backyard. See, I'd had a trailer for several years. Yeah. That I took behind the car, you know. And they took me up on it. They come and stayed 3 or 4 days. Hooked up to the sewer and the electric and everything. Yeah. You know. And real nice. He was a real nice fella and all. So then after his death, there hadn't ever been anything said about it. But I got this telephone call from her. That that John had died, and she was going to cremate him and wanted him buried in the Hamer Cemetery. They'd like you to go out there and pick out the place for him. Well, I said, I'll do anything I can for you. So it just kind of fell on me to work this end of it, whatever it is. She stayed in correspondence with the morticians and so on. So when the time came, I don't know, it went along quite a little while before he told me, he says, I'll take you. But he came out here with me. This mortician in town, I know that real well, and all. He came out here and we picked this spot out. We just, so we thought it was all right. It was up here where it wouldn't be bothered or anything. And she was satisfied, So then she come back. She's been back here 2 or 3 times since then, All that stays at my house part of the time.
So she brought the ashes out in an urn? Or?
No, they were. I didn't know how they were coming. This mortician told me. Albert Chastain's his name, young man. I says, Albert, when will that come? He says, I don't know. It'll just come to me some of these days. Well, I says, get in touch with me. Of course, she says well, he come out here and we picked this spot out. And he says, I don't know when it'll be here. I'll just have to give you a call. So he called me one day and he says, I've got it. He says, let's go out there and bury it. Well, I said, okay. So he brought a man with him. He's buried just right here. Might be right there. I don't know. It's awful close here.
Was it just in a small container or a casket of some sort?
Oh, it's just a little thing about that big square. It's, I don't know whether it's brass or what it is. It's kind of a gold color to it. But I told Albert, I said, Albert, when you get ready to bury that, actually bury it, I'd like to do it. And he said, you can do it whatever way you want to. So he brought a man with him, dug a hole there, just with a post hole digger. Well, they made it bigger than that because it was big enough to get down in it. It's down in there that deep, I expect.
Okay.
Anyway, he went to the car, and I'd never seen it. In fact, I'd never seen one at all. So he come up here carrying it just about 5 or 6 inches square. Handed it to me. So I had thought about it. So and my sister was here. She was the only one. So I kind of said a little prayer as I put it in there. And then that was it. We just filled it up. And so, and she'll be buried here. She'll be, that's my understanding.
Right.
She's got it already numbered here for her, back here.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is.
It's got some interesting symbolism on it. I didn't know if there was she was a great-great-granddaughter of Thomas Hamer. Okay.
Well,
I was curious about the symbolism. Is there any special significance of the hand and the music emblem, or is it just something they chose?
it's just something that she wanted to put on her.
Okay.
Well, she had this all done over in Salem.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if maybe she was musical.
And
or...
she's always sent me some money and have me to keep a flower here. So we couldn't find just a flower to suit us the other day, and Priscilla, my sister, and I brought that out.
Well, I wonder who had brought it, because I wasn't sure what the story was on the grave, and I noticed it.
Well, I think it suited her all right, because she said it was. I wanted her to be satisfied. But,
right. How about the other graves? There's no relationship with the Simpsons in the West?
No, I
just
know.
Happens to be where they're located. Did you know these folks here? Or Sarah and Ethel Simpson?
No, I didn't know. No.
Okay, it looks like they were buried in 1917 and 1925. I didn't know if maybe they were sisters or mother and daughter. How about the Wests? There are no dates or anything on that one.
No.
Okay. The some of them would be interesting to get additional information about.
I see you. There's a whole bunch right in here that's going to be my, well, relation. In other words, it's this Henshaw here was Priscilla. That's my sister.
Oh, okay.
That's her husband, and these are her children.
Okay.
They decided, you see, they wanted to be buried here with her folks.
I see.
And it kind of took over. And then my brother, he decided that well, his family decided wanted in it too. So, see, there's his family and my sister's family both. These markers all in here, all went ahead and had them put in.
So Priscilla's husband's already passed away.
Yeah, she's been married the second time here.
Oh, I see.
And all,
Now, the Meyer, is that related to her?
that's a daughter.
Okay, that's her daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
And let's see,
John is your brother,
the
of course.
Henshaw was her husband, Priscilla's husband,
Uh-huh.
my sister's husband. See, that's and then my brother's on that piece and all. And he's got some jokes. And Billy kind of got up in the air about him doing this. He, for some reason, he didn't want to. He didn't think they ought to come in here and just mark off their graves where they wanted them. I couldn't see anything wrong with it myself, but then he didn't like it at all. But then he just wasn't in shape or didn't just say no. But,
Do you think there will be a time designated when no one else will be allowed to be buried regardless of family connections? We obviously are running out of space pretty quickly.
Well, I think that'll be the thing that'll happen. It'll get Billy began to talk about that when he first come here. You know, and found out I was the one then that said yes and no about it all, you know, who they could. And I said, he said begin to talk about it getting full and all, and I said, there's no use for you and me to worry about it getting full. We're not going to be here that long, you know. But he was that way about it.
Yeah, it appears that even the areas that don't have markers might very well have burials in them.
Well, I'd rather have them marked than
Right. Yeah, and it's at the point now where it might be hard to tell. Of course, some of the burials might be so many years old that you wouldn't find much there anyway if someone did
right up there in
accidentally.
the corner, right, of course, that's Andy's right up in there too, but right here in the corner is some Daltons.
Okay, why don't we walk over there and take a look?
Well, over there at the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elizabeth, wife of John Hickson, and she died in 1911. So would you remember who they would be, or possibly the son and daughter-in-law of Timothy Hickson?
Probably, yes.
Since he's buried over there.
Hi.
Hamer?
Hello.
How are you?
Well, I'm doing all right.
That's good. That's good.
Isn't it a beautiful day to be
It
out?
sure is. It sure is.
And there's some other Hicksons.
You're not the historian, are you?
Yes, I am.
Well, I'm one of the Burtons.
You're one of the Burtons.
You know where you went out to the
Right.
cemetery? Well, we both of them. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well,
You
we
know
were
who
just
we
there
are.
last week.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Isn't that terrible?
it is. Do you know for sure what they're going to do?
Well, it's up to us. I guess I'm one of the board out there.
Do you
we-
plan a meeting, maybe?
No. We are going to post a reward
Oh, yeah.
for arrest and conviction. That's about all we can do.
But do you think there's some way you could, Did you talk about the Hicksons and...
Which one is this?
Now, this is Shepherd here, and this is
Shepherd.
Tomlinson.
Yeah. Well, where is the Hicksons?
The Hicksons are right over here. There was Elizabeth wife of John Hickson, and then a blank space where I assume maybe John Hickson's buried with no marker. I
Well,
don't know. And here's a Marion Hickson.
I remember Marion real well,
Okay.
you know. And then there was another one, let's see if I can think of his name. Marion and
Well, here's a Florence Hickson in her.
Milton
Okay.
Dixon. He used to do anything that would make him a dollar, you know. Because he's worked for me, done some, he can carpenter or cement or do anything.
My.
But Milton
Was he a brother of Marion?
Milton Marion, I don't know. I think Marion worked for Lehigh a long time.
So this is a Joe Hickson that died in 1934.
Well, I remember him, yeah.
Okay. Joe, and I guess Florence Hickson would be his wife.
Probably, yeah.
Did they live around the area here?
Not that I know of. No, I don't believe so.
Maybe just buried.
Yeah, but these did. These were just, you might say, Mitchell people, actually.
Okay.
That one little tree's gonna make it, looks like.
Yeah, that's doing real well, isn't it?
They, I kind of blamed Billy for some of it. We kept talking about getting some, a few trees growing in here. So he went ahead, I think, and ordered the nursery out of Bedford to come over here and set out 4. And there never was watered or anything on what little I could bring out here, you know. That's the only one that survived. There was 2 over there pretty close to my place, you know.
Oh, yeah, I think that would be
They set out 4
attractive.
and all. And
Well, that one seems to be doing real well.
that one did live, but they wasn't, it hasn't grown very much.
Now here's an Ephraim Hickson, and died in 1960. He was, my goodness, he was nearly 100 years old, it looks like.
Yeah.
90.
Yeah.
94.
Yeah.
Did you remember him?
I've heard the name. That's about all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Edward Hickson. Edward and his wife, Laura Hickson. And they both died around 1900 or 1902, so you would have been pretty young then. And then finally Timothy Hickson, but he died before you were born.
There's the one that got popped up, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one he's about to start work on.
Yeah.
These are a lot of the graves of the Lynn family.
Yes. Yeah, all of this is Lynn's right in here.
Do you remember the Lynn family? Or?
Yeah, I knew some of them, you know. And, well, there's one lady, the only one that's connected with the family, still living there in Mitchell. She'd be about my age, I think, you know. I know her.
What's her name?
Well, her last name is Smith now. But, her and her husband both taught school for all their life.
Several of the Lynn boys were killed in the war.
Mention of her, there's something out over here that it's always been interesting to me. If you want to talk about it, you know, if I could see which word it is. Because she's the one that told me about it. Isn't there some Lynn?
Yeah, this is Catherine Lynn, Solomon Lynn, Samuel Lynn.
There, now, S.D. Lynn.
That would be Samuel Lynn.
67th Indiana Infantry. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Well, there's another one. There's 3 of them.
Okay, Solomon Lynn is 67th Indiana Infantry.
Well,
And,
those 2 and this one, I think, are the 3 brothers.
okay.
It was all in the Civil War.
All
All lived through it and came home and then died just natural death.
at young ages, too.
Yeah. Now, she told me that when I first began to talk about
He
it.
was 29 and he was, looks like 21 years old. Isn't that interesting? They made it through the war, but they died at such young ages.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather down there, he made it through the war.
Mm-hmm.
in the Civil War. Well,
George
he wasn't in so long, I don't know, but but these three all got home and then died in natural, you might say natural
Yeah,
death.
Granville Lynn
Mhm.
was the third one that
But
you're referring to.
then there was this, let's see, there was a Billy Lynn. John and Sarah, no, let's see.
Yeah, there's William Lynn.
William and David. They were two bachelors that lived down here.
Huh.
Well, the other side of the Donaldson place,
Uh-huh.
and they had just an old limestone monument here,
Mm-hmm.
and it just deteriorated.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman, I've been talking about that lives in Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
She was interested in it, and she told me, she says, if I can look up the dates, I've got an old Bible. It's got all the dates in it. If I can get the right kind of dates, I'll put up a new monument for them. So she took it on herself to just do this.
And they were both bachelors? Did they live together?
I think so, pretty much. Now this Billy used to attend all of our meetings.
Mm-hmm.
If we had a Hamer reunion or something, Billy was all there. And he couldn't hear. His hearing was worse than mine.
Oh.
And you had to just get up and holler. They didn't have any hearing aids then, no.
Yeah.
But
And then Bennonia Lynn, is this a sister of theirs?
But Davy, I remember them both, but I kind of knew William more. So more better. But I think that's about all I know about them.
Was this their sister here? Do you remember Bennonia?
I don't know.
Looks like she was born about the same time.
Yeah. That's an odd kind of stone, some kind, isn't it?
Is that not limestone?
I don't know what it is. But this here, just went to pieces. Nobody has brought the bottles or anything.
Just the weather itself, maybe. How about Charlie Thomas?
Well, I really don't know.
Okay, he doesn't have any dates on it. Well, what
They're
a
mowing around here. I guess it looks like they trimmed around all this too.
Yeah, they did just this afternoon. Why don't we walk back over this area that we were just getting into when we moved?
Over there at the Dalton.
The Daltons and the Clevelands, and there's a few others that
Well,
I was going to ask about.
those Burtons were interested in having something done out their place.
Yeah, that's where the vandalism took place. Here's a Hamer over here, Hugh N. Hamer, that was in the Civil War. I was curious why he was buried here instead of with the Hamers in the other part of the cemetery. It's right there.
Well, who was it?
Hugh N.
Oh
Hamer.
yeah, that's always been a mystery to me. Who he was.
Okay.
I never did know.
Okay.
Buried up here by himself,
Well, there's a Hugh Hamer that's a son of Thomas Hamer that fought in the Civil War. I wonder if there was more than one Hugh Hamer in the Civil War.
I don't know, really. Indiana Institute.
Here's his original stone.
Yeah.
There's not much left of it.
Well,
Here are some brims over here. Now you mentioned a while ago when we looked at the infants' graves of the Brim family that you thought that those infants were buried here. Maybe.
that's what I think. I think they should have been done over here. He was one of these fellows that just, you might say, well, I'll show them whether there's anything about it or not.
Oh, okay.
I'll just do it whether they want to or not. But I didn't get to see him until it was all over with.
Now there's Salters, Wedgwood, Compton. Did you know any of them?
No. really don't. The names kind of sounds familiar.
Uh-huh. Now, these along here are Cleveland's, Josiah Cleveland, and then his wife and children.
I don't know anything about them.
Didn't know the Clevelands.
I know there's a lady living in Mitchell. She's not in very good health. I kind of know her, but she's connected with him because I think that's her grandmother. That's Cleveland woman.
It's interesting because the woman's grave doesn't have any death date.
Well,
and curious if she was buried elsewhere.
Well,
how about the Kellys? These are the only Kellys in the entire cemetery.
Where's Anders?
Right there. It's all ready for the
Now the headstones to fit right in there.
Yes. And then the footstone will fit down there.
Yeah. The memorial you had the other day, was it more or less around here?
It was underneath the tree over on the other side of the cemetery.
Oh, right.
We brought a group in from the fence and we marched around the edge with music, and then we had a regiment of Civil War soldiers and different people in pioneer costumes that read letters and diaries, and then we had a few songs and then a 21-gun salute.
Well, I thought that it was just my idea that it just have more interest in things in around Andy's death and so on. But,
well,
it wasn't so much that, was it?
No, it was more the Civil War veterans, since Memorial Day was centered around veterans. Now, it would be nice to do something in honor of him. It really would. I think so. They said that it was a beautiful funeral.
I've never seen anything like it.
The way it was conducted.
Yeah. Never seen anything like it.
Bagpipe music and.
But right when they buried him, I was right over there someplace in the crowd, and his father, I'd kind of gotten acquainted with him, and he come right to me over there and shook hands and was quiet, and let's see, well, he says, Frank, I just buried one of my boys. And, had me a crying too. Bad thing, but it do happen.
The Evanses are wonderful people.
I don't know whether Leanne got out here that day or not, finally.
For the memorial program? Yeah, she came.
She got out here. Well, I kind of thought, I think her father-in-law and mother-in-law.
Well, her sister and brother-in-law came.
Well.
And her brother-in-law, Gary Booth, played the bagpipes.
Oh, yeah.
So, that helped.
Well, I just didn't want to come stand in the rain and all that.
It was raining very heavy. It really was coming down Monday.
And well, Leanne come over there to see me. She was going to come and get me and bring me out here. So she came over there about 1:30, and I told her, I said, I'm not going out there this way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it really poured, but
I didn't. I got to thinking about it afterwards. That I bet she'd come ahead on out here.
Yeah. We still had a real nice crowd though. Did you know the Prices or the Steinis? These are. That's Steinis. Just the name to me.
Okay. They own a little piece of land over here out of the park. And all, and they had an interest here, and just took over some places.
How about Angie and Tyne Price?
I don't know much about them, anything really. Just the name. I knew some prices, but it was after them,
Well, I was going to ask you about these Kellys over here.
Well,
Did you know them, or?
no, I don't. I wondered about them. They even changed the monument here a few years ago. I believe they put in some new ones.
Yeah, it looks like that was Andrew Kelly, Guy Kelly, and then this was added. Andrew,
Yeah.
and he died in 1915. But now Oliver and Violetta Kelly died in 1942 and 1973.
Well, I really don't know anything about them.
Do you have any idea why the stone is backwards on the stone there, the Kelly stone?
Yeah, somebody put it in there wrong. Let's see, the man died first, didn't he? Let's see,
Mm-hmm.
1942, 1973, hadn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, they called me. They said, so whoever put that stone in there has put it in wrong. We're going to have to change it, you know. And they'd put it in there so if they buried her, she was going to be on the wrong side of it.
Okay.
So they did. They just swapped the thing around, and you see, I don't know what. Anyway, that's what happened.
Oh, okay.
They had to turn the stone around.
Otherwise, if it was turned the other way,
Yeah.
she would be under his name and he would be under her name.
Yeah.
I see. I
Yeah.
see.
And then it's just law and order. The man and lady's right and left to one another. That is, the man's usually to the right, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, these are the Daltons.
Yeah.
You talked about some. Now, most of these are
Well,
pretty recent.
I knew the old. I didn't know the father and mother,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew Walter. Walter, when I was first married, I was a quarry foreman down there for the Lehigh Lime Company.
Mm-hmm.
And Walter come down there and wanted a job of breaking stone. That's when we broke it with a sledgehammer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked down there a while, and he got real friendly with Hugh Hamer, my cousin over there.
Oh.
But I think they were probably together in high school.
Yes.
And they got interested in boxing.
Mm-hmm.
And after Walter got pretty sick, I went to see him a few times, you know. Well, he would come out here and want me to go with him, and all. And he says, "I'll bet Hugh and I box 1,000 rounds," and all. They just box, just get together and box, you know. So Walter, he was failing pretty fast, and he'd want me to come out here. He'd call me up and say, "Let's go out to the park." He'd drive, you know. And then one day he called and he said, "Let's go out to the park. I want to measure the biggest tree in the park. I know where it is." See, he grew up just right out here, not in the park, but just he just grew up in this park. He hunted and he fished and done everything, you know. And so we went out towards the road out towards the campground, you know, through the Donaldson Wood there.
Yeah.
And he went down over the hill down there, one of the big poplars, and we measured it about up 4 weeks ago. He took a tape and went around it, you know. We measured it, put it down. He says that's the biggest one in the park. Well, I don't know, it went along a month or so, and one day he called me again and says, "We ought to go back out there." He said, "We measured the wrong tree." But we never did get it done. He just failed so fast. He come out here, then he had a lady driving for him. And he just got out of the car and he was going to go down in there again. And she says, "He oughtn't to do that. He'll get down and we can't do anything with him." So we just talked him out of it finally.
Now,
Got him back in the car.
was this his sister's here?
Yeah, no, that's his daughter.
His daughter.
No, it's his sister. Yeah, he's got a.
Now, Virginia might possibly be his daughter.
That was his. Let's see, Virginia. I'm mixed up now. I think she was a sister. Virginia? No. I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Okay.
But after Walter died, and they buried him, no, he got interested in it. He showed me where he wanted to be buried, and we kind of looked it over. He wanted to be sure there was room enough for 2 more graves, and all. Those might have been both his daughters. I don't know.
Now, this one's born in 1905, and he was born in 1903, so they would either have to be brother and sister or husband and wife.
Probably was. This was 1925.
Do you remember his wife, or Walter's wife?
Evidently. I don't know why. Well, that stone's not as old as some of these, I don't think. Or is it old?
It's hard to tell.
Anyway.
Did you remember if Walter had a wife, or did you ever know her?
Well, there's a lady living there in town now. I don't know whether she's Walter's. Wasn't his? I don't know. I'm mixed up about it. She's living there, and after this funeral, she lived away from here, and so she got a mobile home. Walter had a piece of property in town that needed some repair and all. Instead of doing that, she put a good mobile home on the back of the same lot and is living there yet, I think. I never see her. But I stopped to see her a time or two to tell her I feel well, it hadn't been cleaned up any after the funeral. I said, that's your job. You'll just have to take care of it yourself. Take the flowers and things like that. And I said, if you give them some, talk to them, they'd probably level up the grave. They have. You see, they made an opening down there. I didn't know. They said I saw a tree. They told me broke it down, but I never could see anything. Looked to me like it's been just taken out.
I don't know.
And then somebody told me they intend to just leave it that way.
It does make it easy for people in the area over there to come in and
Well, here's where I used to repair the fence so much, back here.
because trees would fall on it.
Well, people, that's where they unwire and get the fence around so they could get in here.
Oh, okay.
See, they didn't want to go around in front, get in here.
Well, it's a peaceful place, isn't it? Just looking out over it and all of the stones, and here with the woods around it and the birds.
Well,
Beautiful, beautiful
yeah.
resting place.
You know, I'm getting awful tired.
Take a break.
Oh.
The Hamers, all of these.
Yeah, this Tom called me this last week. He lives in Cincinnati. And, well, I talked to him and his wife and all. He come out here a few years ago when this grandchild died. And got his son interested in it. And they just got ready and put all these down here and all. And they're all going to be cremated.
Well, they are.
Yes, this child was. That's the first time I ever saw one of those things.
Well, let me ask you, are these 3 brothers and sisters, Roseanne, Thomas Robert, and Chester John?
No.
Okay.
That Thomas Robert is John's father.
Okay.
I knew him. I used to visit with him down in Florida. He lived in Florida several years and died. And well, we kind of got acquainted. See, we were pretty much cousins and all. And then this is their son here. This
Okay.
Thomas R.
So Thomas was married to Mary.
This one is, you see.
Okay, and Asa was their grandson,
Yes.
and he died.
And he died, and they had him embalmed and so on. And I believe they kept it. They put him in one of those little things I was talking about, you know. What do you call them? You know.
Small box.
And they said they kept it on a fireplace mantle in their home for about 2 years.
Okay.
Then the father decided they wanted to bury him in the Hamer cemetery. So he got in touch with me, and I told him to go ahead. Well, Tom, he got interested too, and they were both here and put these out. And he told me the other night, he said, now he don't know just where his dad's ashes are. He died down there, and they just done away with him down in Florida, because he'd been down there several years, you know.
Now, was Roseanne his sister or his wife?
That's his wife. I talked to her on the phone the other night, too.
Okay, so
called me.
This one is the grandfather, and then these two are married, and then this is his son, and these two are married.
Well, that's a grandson. You see.
Okay, I see.
Grandson of John here.
Okay.
And Tom Roberts is his son, you see.
Okay. I think someone had asked me one day about these two, and I was a little confused as to what the relationship was.
Well, that's it. And I forget. Oh, the other night he asked me. He said, "Does the cemetery have a flag?" I says, "There's hundreds of them out there right now." I says, the Legion puts them on all the graves around. And he said, "You know, I thought a little about it." He says, "I thought a little about maybe fixing something at my stone up there to put a flag in." And that was his own idea about it. He didn't know they hadn't. I said, "They got a flag down to the park and all," but I said, "There's no big flag." But he was interested in it. And he told me then here a while back, well, he comes down here, you'll get to see him. He comes down here and camps.
Okay.
They always bring a truck and some dogs. He's a dog hound.
Oh, goodness.
And all. But anyway, he told me they've got the remains, what I want to say now. They're going to have they'll turn their eyes and things over to it.
Oh, okay. They're going to donate their bodies to science.
Yeah, they donated their bodies, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
These stones over here, someone's just put flowers on them, but I don't have any idea who they are.
I don't either. Nobody's asked me anything.
Obviously, there must be a family member somewhere to mark them with flowers, but I can't find anything on the stones themselves.
But right here's the sore spot with me all the way around.
How is that?
Well, let's see.
See, there's an Albert Lucas and there's a Clifford Merrill. Although it looks like that stone is turned around backwards.
Well, I can't even remember this fellow's name, but
That's a Sears.
Sears, yeah. Well, she was the same relation to the Hamers as I was. And all her grandmother's out here someplace, and anyway. She got to ask me about marking off a lot out here. And that went along a few years, and I told her, I said, well, go ahead. I said, if you're interested out there, go out there and mark the off one. That's all anybody was doing there, just coming doing it on their own. Well, they marked off one here. They got just a square stone. And then this man died, I don't know how many years ago. And they never had to put up a monument, you see.
1973 or 78. Looks
Well,
like.
that's all theirs. That
Yeah.
thing's, it's a wonder it's still here.
Yeah. It was in the
He
70s.
used to come to the park pretty regular. He was an artist.
Uh-huh.
And he set up a kind of a shop over there by the blacksmith shop.
Uh-huh.
And he'd sell some stuff maybe every day. No, I don't know whether it looks like now that they didn't have anything, although I was here when they buried him. And they said it was a very expensive outfit that they put him in. You know. And then they've never put up a monument or anything. So there was another lady, well, she was a dilly, part of the family, that knew him. And I was talking to her about it, and she says, I don't know whether he even got the money or not. No.
Oh, goodness.
So then here,
Now, is the wife still living then? Of this man?
yes,
Okay,
Yeah,
is she going to be buried here?
wants to be, and she's got 3 daughters
Mm-hmm.
and all. But here was a son-in-law, you see. And he happened to be well, Billy called me one day when I was getting my lunch over at the Senior Citizens. And he says, there's a fellow wants to be buried out in the Hamer Cemetery. And he gave me his name. I said, and I couldn't hear him. There was noise in there. And I couldn't hear him very good. And I says, well, I don't know about that name. I don't know. He says he's Nelson Sears' son-in-law. Well, before I really give it a thought, I said, well, I guess it'd be all right. So they come right over here and he died in Bedford. That outfit come over here. But as soon as I hung up after saying that, I think I'd done the wrong thing. You know, and I still think I did. Because if I had anything to say about it now, they couldn't bury anybody but her here. Of course, she wanted these 3 daughters to be buried right here. Well, that was the son-in-law. I guess she thought maybe they'd all get in here. But there's not that much room here, you know. As I say, though, I felt like I'd done the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of bothered me a little. And Billy kind of agreed with me, but that day he was talking about it, he didn't know who he was.
Sure. And when you're put on the spot like that.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like there's open area there, but it's such a steep bank. I don't know.
It is, you know.
I don't know how that would work out.
I never noticed that one day way down there.
I was just looking at that. I was going to ask you who that was. It looks fairly new. Okay, it's graves of 2 infants also, Johnny and James McDonald. One died in 1914 and the other in 1920. Did you remember any McDonalds?
No.
Okay. It looks like 2 infants that were buried side by side.
Yeah. Probably is.
Now the Dillies, were they related to the Hamers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now let's see if I can. Let me sit down.
Okay.
Edgar Lucas married this, let's see. Albert Lucas. Well, now Myra, I can talk a little about them because I remember her real well. Myra, they called her. They called her Myra, but what Almara, isn't it? That's not.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah, you know. Well, she used to come. This Uncle Frank of mine. They were about the same age, and they were both widows. They was a little relation and all, but they would get together and drive over here or come to my house and visit and so on. But But now she was the mother of some of these Dillies,
Oh, okay.
you know. And Edgar Lucas then was, let's see, 1940. Oh, I don't know.
Is it possible he was their son? The son of Albert and Elmira?
Could be.
That would fit.
Yeah, yeah.
And then how was her children Dillies? Was that through a son-in-law by that name, or?
Yeah, it had to be, because I remember Katie Dilly.
Uh-huh.
She'd have been a daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So their daughter.
I think she's buried around there. I'm not quite sure.
Now, Elmira was a Hamer then?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a sister to, well, Gus Hamer. See there?
Gus Hamer was there.
They just called him Gus, Augusta.
Okay.
Well, she was his sister.
Okay.
And I remember him real well. He was an old railroader. Never done anything else. Anything in his life. He just about half owned to be an old railroad.
Oh my.
And it was kind of funny to me. One time my wife and I had started to, well, I don't know whether it was going to St. Louis or not, but at that time, you go west out of Mitchell on 60, it just follows the railroad. You just, between there and Shoals down there, you crossed the railroad a time or two. Just a plain old gravel road, that's all it was. Well, we'd started over there and we got down there to one of them crossings. There laid that big car up there on the side of it, kind of the side of the railroad, out of the railroad and all. And there was a man standing there. And I said, what happened here? And he says, that fellow come around here so fast he couldn't make, see, he was supposed to make a turn right across the railroad. And he couldn't make it. He just let her turn over. Well, suits me.
I'm afraid that you're going to get wore out on us.
Well,
And we've been standing and walking.
I'm glad to do if it's been anything to help, but then I'm just not as good a health I have.
Well,
been.
you've got information in your head that we don't have on paper anywhere, and that we want to find out and record for history and for future generations to come. And you've provided us a lot of first-hand information, wealth of first-hand information.
Well, I've always been real proud of this place, and I'm willing to help as long as I'm able, and so on. I don't know whether my memory's as good as it should be. I'm not. People wants to know why my dad and mother are buried in Mitchell. Well, there's a little reason for that. I felt like, as I've told you before, I think that when there was something needed to be done here, it usually fell on my dad's hands to get some of the other folks interested enough to come out here and do some work or something like that. And I think then, he never did talk to me anything about it, but they, through my grandmother, when she died, they bought a lot out there in Mitchell, have a place to bury her, and well, there was 2 or 3 graves in there. Well, when it looked like for sure he wasn't going to live, they went ahead and made arrangements. I really didn't know anything about it, to bury my dad out there, because he had talked about maybe this be abandoned sometime, you know. So that's how they come to be buried out there. Then of course, my dad died young, 56. Here I am putting here 96.
Yeah.
You know, but he'd been a great man. He could make anything out of a piece of wood that anybody could make, carpenter work or anything like that.
I think he would be proud if he could see the cemetery today.
He would.
And
I am. I'm proud of it now.
the
way it's
attention
taken
that
care
it's
of.
received.
Because I've never seen it like this nice.
This is April 16th, 1991. This is Rex Deckard, park historian at Spring Mill State Park, and I'm with several genealogists that are doing some research in Lawrence County, Nancy Todd Ludlow, and we're visiting local cemeteries around Spring Mill State Park. This is the first one, Freedom Cemetery, located on Highway 60 near Leipzig, about 4 to 5 miles from the park. This is also known as Freedom Gammon Cemetery, and several of the graves here are people that were closely associated to Spring Mill families during the 19th and early 20th century.
That Johnson,
Yeah.
I don't have it in my thing. I just looked on it and I wasn't sure. You know, that there is my uncle's mother and father. This is his sister. This one that's named T-A-R-R.
Tar,
that's his
yeah.
sister.
Yeah, no, I've seen that name before. Squire Boone. Huh?
That's what they tell me, but I haven't got the connection.
Stop is on County Road 925, just about a mile from the park. This is an abandoned cemetery, and it's known as Stevens Cemetery, and it's the burial site of several of the people in and around Spring Mill. It's been abandoned for a number of years. It's on the Walter Rager farm.
I tried. I couldn't get it apart enough. Huh? I tried. Thing apart enough.
This is a stone of Abner Stevens.
I got it. Where are you? I think this is the stone. This big one back here. Guess what I lost? God, I can't miss it.
This is the stone of Andrew Todd, and it was his cabin that, in the restoration, was used for the Munson House, the leather worker shop in the village today. Andrew Todd was also a Civil War soldier that was in Company D of the 24th Indiana Infantry.
Well, you ready?
Several Hicksons are buried in the Stevens Cemetery as well as Todds and Stevens.
Got a sticker book on it. Yeah, this is the worst one, but I really wanted to see it. And I thought the sticker really told me I'm not there.
Stevens Cemetery. The cemetery tragically abandoned, for all purposes forgotten.
Take the landscape.
This is the Sheik Cemetery, which is located about 6 miles from Spring Mill State Park,
On what road?
right off of Meridian Road.
Okay. Notice me?
Makes it difficult. This is the gravestone of John Washington Sheiks, who died at age 18 and was killed in the Battle of Sabine's Road Crossings in Louisiana during the Civil War. He was the son of David L. Sheets and Sylvania Sheets. John Washington's picture is on display in the Sheets house in Springmill Village. He was a flag bearer, and the story tells us that he was shot while holding up the Union flag and firmly planted it in the ground to make sure that it didn't touch the soil before he dropped to his death. The back section of the Sheets Cemetery has many of the Hickson family buried, and the majority of these graves are from the 19th century. This is the same Hickson family that was part of the Timothy Hickson family that are buried in the Hamer Cemetery, and this Hickson family are the ones that at one time owned the property where the Springmill Lake is at the present time.
Annie, for some reason. I don't know why. Old. Her age, it's a girl. I saw it 88 up there. Armed Force. I've seen bass. BASS next to it. Did you notice the daughter's buried between the wife and the husband?
Mm-hmm. The Sheets Cemetery remains It's well taken care of and maintained on a monthly basis, and the stones are in excellent condition, no evidence of vandalism whatsoever, and in very good repair. This is the Mitchell City Cemetery.
Yeah.
Very obviously in excellent condition. The Mitchell City Cemetery is a very commonly used cemetery even today. As a matter of fact, at the present time there's a burial taking place. But many of the Spring Mill village people, particularly from the latter part of the 19th century, were buried here. Amzi Munson, who at one time was the leather worker in the village, is buried here. And several members of the Hamer family, Turley family, Todd family, and others are buried here as well.
Born May 1st, 1794, in the town of Wells, Connecticut.
This is the grave of Amaziah Munson, the village cobbler who was in Spring Mill, who was married to Hugh Hamer's daughter Maria, and after her death he remarried Catherine Burton, and she is buried here next to him. There are also several Munsons surrounding them that are very likely children from the second wife,
William M.
William N.,
M.
Dr. James Powell,
William M. 1870, 1931. In the town of Wells, Connecticut. Died October 20th, 1972 in Mitchell, Indiana. Is that good enough? Now you're going up here?
very possible that
Levi.
Levi Munson was the father of Amzi Munson, who migrated from Connecticut and
It's
at the age
Wells.
of Wells, Connecticut, and at the age of around 36, Amzi was born. 34 that Amzi was born.
The 22nd, 1874, Olive Munson was born, died the 8th of May, 1924.
She was born in 1872, wasn't she?
72. That's a 7. That other says daughter.
Grave of Dr. James E. Powell, born June 20th, 1866, died March 6, 1894, is right beside the Amzi and Catherine Munson stone. The Munson tombstone is the tombstone of Isom Burton and Kate Burton.
Now what I want.
Here is another in memory of George Sheeks, which is interesting because we have just seen a in memory of George Sheeks stone in the Sheeks Cemetery located several miles from here. It's unknown which cemetery he's buried at, but it's probably more likely that he's buried in this cemetery rather than the other one. The marriage certificate for Lily Dodson and William T. Moore is hanging in a display case on the 3rd floor of the Spring Mill Museum. This is the Freedom Cemetery of Lawrence County in Marion Township, about 1 mile south of Mitchell on Highway 37. as with the other cemeteries we have seen, there are many, many people that were connected with Spring Mill Village and also the park property that are buried in this little cemetery. By and large, this cemetery is in a very good state of repair and appears to be fairly well maintained.
That pretty?
These stones were apparently hand-etched. Susan Finger, first wife of Allen Tolliver, died August 22nd, 1847, age 38 years, 11 months, 16 days, and an enemy of slavery and the liquor trafficking. Apparently a member of the temperance movement as well as the abolition movement.
There's a little.
This section of the cemetery, there are quite a few memorial stones, which leads us to believe that possibly the people were buried elsewhere and later a memorial put here on their behalf. In the back part of the cemetery, there are several stones that have been damaged and are in very serious need of attention. Alexander, Wood, Hall, Tolliver. These are all names that seem fairly common in this cemetery. This is the stone of Mary Todd. The cabin that later belonged to Andrew Todd was the one that was used in restoring the present Munson House in Spring Mill Village. This is Burton Cemetery. It's located about 3 miles outside of Mitchell, off of Highway 37 south of town. And many of the people buried here had close ties to Spring Mill Village and also the property that the park now sits on. This is a very beautiful cemetery that was in excellent condition until just a few months ago when it was attacked with vandalism on 2 different occasions. The cemetery also has a shelter house where there's a yearly gathering of the Burton family and a reunion, and next to the shelter house are a number of unmarked graves and stones. And there are quite a few recent burials in Burton Cemetery as well. This is where Joel Pleasant Burton is buried, and Jonathan Turley's sister, Eliza married Joe Burton as well, and they're both buried here. John Pleasant Burton, he was buried standing up, and the last rites were performed by Brother Mason in the Masonic Lodge. Most of the vandalism that was done has already been repaired.